All right, we're live. At least it's telling me we're live, and we're gonna VOTech Simplified. I'm running late today, and I also I I I'm just laughing because my comments up here are from the show I did earlier today, and I can't remember how I refresh that because I have an app that allows us when you chat, it'll throw something up. I'm gonna see if I throw something up here if it'll clear that chat there. So welcome. I'm just gonna say welcome, welcome. If you see this, let me know you can hear me, see me. All right, all right. Yeah. See, now that comes in at the bottom there, and anyway, sometimes I shut it down in between sessions. I did a session earlier today with Johnny Heller, and so this one's on. So today we're going to talk about dither. We're going to talk about denoising. We're going to talk about spot cleaning and some stuff like that. Gonna be a short one today. It's over 100 degrees here in Southern California. Every September we get about a week of cold, and cold of extreme of about 100 degrees over a week. And I happened to look up the stats because I was kind of checking out the week in case I want to go play pickleball later this week and see what the temperature is. And I realized, oh, okay, this is our week in September that we're always going to go up. And it's just, I've lived here 40 years, and every September seems to be a week where we get into 100 degrees for roughly plus or minus 5 degrees for the whole week. And this is one of our weeks. And I found out statistically, October is actually as warm or warmer than September. I know you really want to know the weather around here in SoCal, and now you do. And so today we're going to talk about dither. And what in the world is dither? Well, dither, so it came up in one of the groups, one of the audiobook groups, where someone was going, what's dither? Well, first off, all the good apps have dither, but people don't really notice it. And for example, RX has dither, and right now, depending on what you're working with, if the bit depth stays the same, dithering is not employed. But if I do something like this where I say, okay, let's go to 16-bit, this is a 24-bit 44.1 file and then we have some choices on dither. And there's none, which means turn off dither, and I'll talk about what dither is in a second. And it's called white noise. Then there's the white noise version. Then there's noise shaping. Now, here's the one thing about dither. Dither is like hamburgers. McDonald's has hamburgers. The Habit has hamburgers. In-N-Out has hamburgers. Five Guys has hamburgers. Steakhouses have hamburgers. Cheap places, diners have hamburgers. And there's just like 400 different grades of it. Dither is used on virtually every video production you've ever seen, and it is very prevalent in the audio app world as well. I haven't checked to see, like, for example, if Audacity has dither. Twisted Way probably doesn't. I don't, but the better ones all have it. Why? Because it makes your audio, so at the bottom line, it makes your audio sound better, and we'll talk about why and a little bit about what it does here in a minute. But so there's the upside of dither, and then there's the minor downside of dither, which is really, it has nothing to do with the sound quality. If I could, I'd have dither on everything. I mean, where it's needed. If I'm downsampling, where if I'm taking my bit depth down, I would rather have it dither than do anything else. It actually helps your audio sound better. But since people don't understand it, and since the audiobook publishers, when they measure your audio, they don't take into account that you might have dither. And if you have dither applied, it's a terrible name, by the way. I wouldn't call it dither if they had ever asked me. And we'll define it here in just a minute. But we get into this problem that every audiobook that you submit, they tend to check the stats of what you're doing there. Let me switch this out here. I'll cancel this. Cancel this. By the way, you see, if I'm exporting, I have some choices there. If I go into Studio One and I open something here, and if I were going to export something, then in the options, Studio One does not give you choices among all the different ones that you can have, but it allows you to have dithering for playback and export, which would be a good thing. I would have that on 100% of the time if I could. but it messes with the stats. Now, here's an example. You've probably heard me say this 100 times. You can have audio that meets the audiobook specs for the whole. The audiobook world has some specifications that they need or they want, and you could measure any audiobook using this waveform statistics in RX. There's other ways to do it at ACX. ACX has a program that will do it. They'll tell you upload something. It'll tell you what the specs are on it as far as RMS and that kind of thing. You also have it. Audacity has one. There's a Second Opinion. There's some different ways of measuring it, but you can look at total RMS here and sample peaks, and you can get an idea. But you also can go ahead and check the noise level here by selecting, like this section here is a pretty good, here's the noise floor that's occurring in this little sample here. And then this one, it's minus 65 and minus 53 for the peaks. And I can look at that and say, okay, based on that, that's a certain value. Well, let's talk about Dither, what it is, why it's there, and when you should use it, and then when you shouldn't. So Dither, if you're looking at RX, I'll get someone calling me in a panic that says, hey, all of a sudden I have some noise in my audio up at the top, and they notice it. All right, what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to turn this all up. I'll gain that up for you just so you can see it clearly on my screen. And let's just bring it up. We'll make it bright. Okay, see that little strip at the top? That's Dither. And what is Dither? Dither is the most brilliant concept. Yeah, thanks, Johnny. It's the most brilliant concept I've mathematically that I've seen in a long time. And it's been around for decades, but it's really become prevalent here in the last 5 years. And what it is some genius way over my pay grade figured out that you can mask the noise in your audio by putting some random noise in your audio. But the random noise has to meet a whole bunch of criteria mathematically. And what it will do is it will cancel out the noise that exists within your audio. So it's a weird concept, but here's the way I think of it. This is a gross simplification, but it uses two things. One, wave mathematics, you can have two waves and they can cancel each other out. So if I have a peak and then if I have another wave, another sound, and its wave goes the opposite direction, they can cancel each other out. You see it all the time if you go water skiing or you go out on a pond and you throw some pebbles in and two waves come together, and two peaks can cancel each other out if they come together at the right time. Well, somebody figured out in digital audio that mathematically you can take and add some noise, which is going to be up in this upper frequency, and you can put it in a spot above where people can hear. Nobody can hear this stuff because it's above our hearing, and it's so lightweight, it's so airy, it's almost it's just imperceivable in proportion to our sound when it's in the upper end here. And the higher above human hearing it goes, then the more prevalent it becomes. But they're using the math of wave mathematics, and you can have this randomized sound up above our hearing that actually mathematically cancels out some of the noise within the zones that we do hear. So what does that mean? It's great. It allows you to have audio that sounds better to our audience without doing anything. All right, less noise. It actually cancels out some noise, and it uses this masking effect. And you hear it all the time. If you went to a soccer stadium or a baseball stadium where there are a bunch of people they're cheering, and you can't make out any one voice in the crowd noise because it's so much going on. All these things mask other things that are going on. So if someone was saying, hey, I'd like some popcorn or I'd like a hot dog, and you're sitting 10 feet away, you'll never hear that person speaking because there's so much noise going on. It ends up masking an individual talking. Now, if you're right next to that individual, you might hear it, but if you're, 10 feet away, you can't hear the conversation of somebody who's close to you relatively if there were no noise. But with the stadium noise going on, it masks that. Well, it's a similar concept, but it's bizarre because whoever thought of putting noise up above our hearing to cancel out noise within our hearing? That just blows my mind. And so one of the things, I'll give you an example, when you get into the higher end DAWs, since they have it and it's so good and it's so advanced, like Studio One in version 6, they totally upgraded the math in the background, because now they support up to 64-bit wave files and some other things. So when they did that, they realized, hey, now, every year, every couple years, the mathematicians, the audio mathematicians find ways to make all this stuff better. And dithering has continued to advance over the years. And there is some really advanced stuff. And they just rewrote and reapplied new state-of-the-art dithering to the Studio One thing. And what happens is that, if this is checkboxes on, it freaks people out at first if they don't know about it. And the same thing, it's available in other products. You can see here it's available in RX. It's not exclusive to Studio One. RX even has 2 different algorithms, because they understand that there's more than one, and even the worst of them these days. So people will go, oh, which one should I use if I'm using if I'm using RX? And it's like, well, first off, anything's better than nothing. Second, if you're staying at 24-bit and it came in at 24-bit, it won't make any difference. It's going to be, there's no dither applied when you're staying at the same bit depth. If you go to a lower bit depth, then there's some things that happen mathematically called quantization. Boy, I'm blowing that. When you quantize things, basically you don't have, if you start off with a bunch of numbers beyond the decimal point, you have to truncate some of them. You have rounding errors, so you make decisions about, if it's 0.5 you go up, if it's 0.4 you go down, and you end up with some rounding errors. And what happens is by putting in some dither, you end up with negating all those rounding errors, and so nobody ever hears them. And there's some different ones, and even the worst of them now have gotten so sophisticated. If I were using RX, I'd be using the noise shaping version of it. That's, in my mind, the better one of the ones that are available. But here's the weird thing. I don't think anybody would hear the difference for our case, where we have a single track or a couple tracks. This is very good as well. Either of them are great, but I would use the MBIT version that if I were using RX. And RX is one of the few that give you a choice, which is kind of a problem, because nobody knows, which one to use. And there are different circumstances based on what you're doing. If you need to optimize down to that last nth degree, just note, if you're going from 24-bit from 24-bit to 16-bit, there is going to be something happening. Either it's going to truncate anything beyond a certain number of digits, or you're going to have some quantization errors, and most people won't hear them anyway. Dither makes that better. It takes audio and makes it better. But this little stuff right up here also ends up being part of the statistics here. And if I black that out, then it's not going to make that much of a difference. And it really depends on what noise was there, because the dithering algorithms are looking at the noise there and making decisions about what they do and how much, and how the random distribution of stuff is in the dithering zone. And it ends up that sometimes it won't make any difference anyway for most people, because they wouldn't have heard it. Things are masked, doesn't matter. And then, so I just want you to know, dither's a good thing. And for voiceover projects, I leave dither on. Doesn't hurt anything. It's only when somebody comes in and gets freaked out because they're doing an audiobook and they didn't know anything about dither, and all of a sudden they see this, I'll undo it there, and they go, wow, there's noise in my audio. But if they looked at the frequency scale, they would go, hey, no big deal. Look at this. It's kind of starting up here in a zone where, what is that starting at? It's starting at 16K, almost 16 and a half, 17K. And it's it's imperceivable in those lower things. By the time it's really fully kicked in, it's in the 20K range. If you're over 15, you won't hear any of this stuff. You couldn't hear this stuff down in the low end because it's so minor, and it's just unhearable. And somebody's just brilliant to figure out that you can use math in a way that allows you to get better quality sound. Nobody knows it's there, and it is visually different if someone has a spectrogram. Now, by the way, I love spectrograms because so a lot of people use the plugins for RX for all sorts of things. And I love using the spectrogram because instantly I can see that in this piece of audio on the low end here, that's probably air conditioner noise or some sort of fan or something going on down there. And at a glance, if I go through a bunch of these different things, where people send me different stuff. They send stuff to me, okay? And when I look at it, I instantly can say, no, no air conditioner, nothing in the background that's a problem. And you can see, I can quickly scan even, this is 6 minutes of audio. And through a scan just about that long, I instantly have some idea about what's going on with something in terms of some noise. See, we took out some noise there. I don't know, oh, yep, there's the same thing with noise. There's some noise there. That's either it's probably an air conditioner, but I don't know without listening to it and figuring that out. But in any case, Dither would help it. But I don't. It's like not worth getting into a fight with people in terms of trying to get them to leave Dither on or off. So anyone's doing audiobooks, I just say turn it off. If your DAW supports turning it off, Studio One does have a checkbox that it can turn it off. If you're working voiceover, e-learning, all the other stuff, I leave Dither on because why? It makes your audio sound better automatically. Okay. The science of it has gotten so good. That's a done deal. All right. Let me look for questions that are there. And then, so now the only other thing, when it comes to noise reduction, anyone who knows me knows I love RX for that. And there's 3 denoisers in RX. Every once in a while, people are asking, hey, what about elements versus standard? I mean, I'm always in standard these days for a couple simple reasons. One, what you can learn when you have, somebody sent me an audio sample here, and this is what it looks like, and I instantly can look at it and go, hey, noise problem. If I'm using the plugins, I can't see that, and I may or may not, it depends, if it's right on the edge of hearing, I may not notice that. The problem is that this audio could get amplified later. So just because I don't hear it in this sample doesn't mean it won't be a problem, and then I'll analyze it, figure out how loud it is, bring it up and fully master it to the right levels. And once it's at the level for distribution, I might be able to hear that later, where at a glance I can see it now, you can see it now. And then there are basically 3 denoisers, voice denoise, and this one is a great thing for people that have pretty decent rooms. I have a lot of people, this is all they ever need to handle everything that's going on with their voiceover stuff. When you have things like this air conditioner here, I want to selectively go through and use spectral denoise, where I can be very, very targeted with my noise denoising. I'll turn this and I'll turn this and I'll render that. And so what I'm going to do is undo that. And if you know what you're doing, then I can go through and I can render this out. And the only thing I did right there using a higher end denoiser is the only thing I touched was that there. And I may go through and decide I may apply a voice denoise after doing that, but I just took that out. Let me see if I can zoom in on that screen. Hold on, let me zoom in. I should have zoomed in before. Let me undo. And there's the original. And then after the denoiser, all it did was it just diminished that down to the point where it's almost like it was never there. Okay. So that's a fantastic tool for doing that. I can do a lot more with that. I'm not going over all the denoisers and the details, but I can selectively denoise just a minor band. And if I have air conditioners, they have a tendency to have a lot of stuff in the low end, and then they do have some higher end stuff. I'll take that out with voice denoise usually. Let me quit my zoom out stuff there. And then the other thing that is that's brand new to RX11 is dialogue isolate. And this is one of my favorite denoisers here. This is absolutely incredible technology here, where I just kind of dial it in and it'll get random noise. It's amazing what it will get. And I can just render this out and quiet everything down a little bit if I want. And it just does a spectacular job to take out some noise in there gracefully. Okay. So I'm very happy with this denoiser, and I'm not even using the best one on this right now. I was just using the one that comes with standard. I usually use the other one if I can get away with it. So there's a lot of options for denoising, and then we also have our spot cleaner, which is called spectral repair, which allows me to go in and find something. And if I have, let me see if I could find something in a sample here that would make sense for that. There we go. Usually when I have something that's this long, I can find some noise. Yeah, there we go. There's a little noise right there. Well, if I go ahead and take this little spot cleaner here, I can highlight this little section here. Let me go ahead and zoom in. And we'll zoom in. You can kind of see that little line down there? When I go ahead and I render that, let me hold it. I got to zoom out again. I'm going to render that. And now that noise, I will zoom back in. All right, there is now gone. Oh, yeah, that's funny. I just clicked on the wrong. There it is. Noise gone. No one will know I took it out. Spectral Repair is a brilliant tool and allows me to take out stuff that are very difficult to take out otherwise. Okay. So some great denoisers there. Let me see if there's any questions, comments. How could Isolab improve the era for Studio One? I know you're an advocate for yeah. The biggest thing that they could do is offer more features. There's a couple. Matter of fact, the only so what for those that don't know, if I have this right here and I have a noise, so I'm listening along and I hear something, I can right click on it and I can say event effects and I can actually take it and it's now I'm looking at that little segment there, also known as an event in RX. This is an RX. This is working within Studio One. Also works in Pro Tools and Logic. And the big thing is this one has the same spectral repair in it as the other one. So I would set this up so that I can have it work like I'd have it working in RX itself. And now I can go through, and here's one of the big difference. I don't have instant process. So I have to go through and I have to highlight something, and then I have to choose process, and then it will take it out. I want an instant process within this one where I just highlight and it's done, just like I have within the RX, whatever we call it. One of the things that nobody knows about this is that I can also roll. I can drag, I can roll, and I can zoom in and out on different things if I roll my mouse wheel different ways. It's actually quite interesting. Nobody knows that. I know it, you know it, but nobody else knows that. There's some ways to zoom in that aren't obvious. You roll your mouse wheel and you can do all that kind of stuff. So it's a feature that works. And then when I close this, the biggest thing, it's non-destructive. I've just changed this audio. It gives me a little indicator down here that it's there. And now whatever I took out won't be heard because and then once I can commit it, and when I do that, it'll stay that way. Or if I undo it, I could undo it today, tomorrow, 2 years from now, because I can always go back into that little thing and get rid of it should I want to do that. Okay, I would go into this and say, hey, no event editor, and now my audio is back to the original. So it's pretty amazing what it can do. And I think I don't think enough people know about it or how it works or take advantage of it. But if you know RX well, then it's an absolutely fabulous tool for spot cleaning things when you come up against something that you don't like and you want to deal with. And that does work in Studio One, Pro Tools, and Logic. Okay, so those three have real-time integration with that. It works as a real-time effect. But the coolest thing is if you take it all off, you're back to your original audio, so it's non-destructive, and it's a fabulous thing. Okay, I think you'll be impressed with that if you ever use that. All right, now, let's see what happens here. I bet if I do this, look at that, that comes up there. I still don't understand what's going on with that. I got all my comments from a previous session I did earlier today. All right, so since I don't see any questions there, I'm gonna keep today short. It's nice and warm here in Southern California. And I'm going to go take a little break. And if you have something that you want me to go over into tech, by the way, I love one of the things I have to do sometime soon is I have to go over my new, I've been using this quantum interface now for a long time. And I've been using it. I use it. It's feeding right now OBS, which is feeding this YouTube. I use this for my Zoom. I use this for, it's crazy. And this thing has just been fantastic for doing all the things that I need it to do. And I need to do another video on how cool this thing is, because it's amazing how inexpensive it is, and it's just punching way over its weight class for the quality that you get and the utility that you get. So I'm really impressed by that. But I now have been using it, I think 2 to 3 months full time every single day, running through. It's just had countless hundreds of hours of doing interesting things and doing those things well. Okay, so stories for How should we incorporate the RX dialog isolate into the templates? Okay, well, dialog isolate, first thing, so somebody asked a question here. How should we incorporate the RX dialog isolate into the template for those using your templates? Well, number one, if you're in your own studio, for dialog, let me go back here. Dialog isolate is a new tool in RX11. So some of you still are on 10, that's fine, 9, whatever. So you don't have this tool. It really depends on your existing environment. If you already have everything dialed in and the existing tools are doing a spectacular job, you do not need to add this in. Where this is going to come into the biggest play are for people that are recording in multiple locations. So my adult son has to record in some hotel rooms and things like that. This is a beast. This is a killer piece of tech that will help him record in situations where he would have had problems before, and he would have had to do a lot of spot cleaning on his own, and this will just handle it without him spot cleaning anything. It's just much smarter. It's brand new technology and really working well. If you already have in your studio, it's set up to where you're already denoising and your studio hasn't changed, then it doesn't help you. It's almost like, hey, you get another flavor of ice cream, but you're happy with the flavors of ice cream you already have. This is a more powerful denoiser, but if you're in a decent studio, then you shouldn't need that. Like I have a fan on right now. Like I said, I'm on a second floor. It's 100 degrees. And so I have a fan running right now. Well, if I had to record, what I would do is I'd be running dialog isolate against that to have it filter out my fan noise, or I'd be a little smarter and turn off my fan. Okay, that's really the right answer to that question. But we do have situations where people have a neighbor's air conditioner that's on, even if theirs is off. So their recording space is normally quiet, but something's going on at the neighbor's place or outside their home, apartment, condo, whatever. And then they need to have better tools or additional tools to knock down stuff that they don't need if they have a nice booth. So for a lot of us, most of us, I don't really add dialog isolate right now because I don't need it in my wife's booth. I don't need it in mine under normal circumstances. It's when I do travel sometimes for audio work or conferences and things like that. If I have to record something in a hotel room, then this tool is just a lifesaver for that. So a lot of people that have my templates and they have my stacks and they have all my tools, they're not going to need it. It's having another option in your toolkit for the cases where it does make a positive difference. Then it would replace very often spectral denoise, or it'd be more likely to replace where we have voice denoise. It's voice denoise on steroids. It will handle changing situations very gracefully. It also can handle some reverb in the room. But in my studio, I better not have reverb, okay? I mean, I shouldn't. I have my room treated so that I don't need to deal with that, and so should you. So it really will depend on your circumstances, and most people that already have my previous generation of tools don't need to change anything just because there's a new denoiser. The old ones are going to continue to work really well, and they do. And then this is on top of that if you have circumstances or a location where you need some other things. All right? I hope that helps there. And all right. So I look forward to talking to you guys next week. Send me a message if you want me to talk about anything specific that has to do with DAWs, interfaces, RX, whatever. Anything related to home studio stuff. Definitely people today, I had a weird one where it's like they need to know about, they want to know about mice because they want to scroll quietly. It's like, oh, well, I know which mouse that is. But even so, I kept thinking, hey, if you're recording and you're doing it right and you have good punch and roll, if I have to scroll a script on my screen, then I stop. And the reason I stop is, hey, if it's time for me to scroll a screen, I'm probably going to have a little bit to drink, a little sip of something to drink. I'm going to reset, and then with punch and roll, you get to hear the pre-roll coming back in, what you just did, match it. No one will know I stopped and had something to drink and scrolled my script. You need to stop at some point anyway. It's not like you're going to record 5 minutes even without a something that you come back. What cracks me up with the good punch and roll is I get to see people's raw project file, And my son, who's brilliant at this stuff because of all the sports broadcasting he does, and he can have 2 to 3 hours on mic at a time, and he's done that for a decade. And when you're used to doing that much stuff, he can go for longer periods of time. But some days he's tired, some days he's whatever, the way the script is written. And within a 2-minute period, he'll have 4, 5, 6 segments. And other days he'll rip off the whole 2 minutes with no breaks. You can't tell the difference when you're done. So if he was having a day where he needed to reread something, and in behind the scenes, I'll divide this one up here and divide this one up here and just change its color so you can see, a bunch of little, I just put in some little segments here. Nobody can hear all these, that if these were separate segments in the punch in over the 50 seconds, nobody would know that there's that many segments versus it all being read at once. So if you're reading an audiobook or you're working on that and you punch in and you have one every 30 seconds, one every 45 seconds, whatever, after a page, you stop, you grab something to drink, a little sip of something, you make sure everything else is right, and then you go back to it. And you really don't care if you have 20 segments or 2,000 segments in a 20-minute chapter. It just doesn't matter. So, people want to scroll without stopping, and certainly if you have a great mouse, you can do that. I do that all day long. I mean, I can do it. But a lot of times I just go, I'll stop. Good time. If I get through a whole page, it's a good time to go ahead and have something to drink. So you can do both. Get a great mouse. Logitech MX Master 3S is my favorite right now. We'll see if they ever come out with something different. That hopefully they'll come out with a 4X or a 6X, or I want a high number, right? But I've been rocking these things for about 5 years now, and I keep trying. I do buy other mice, and I try them out for a month or so, and I just actually use them to where I can get it to where I don't have to think about it. And I keep coming back to this one. I've been through half dozen mice over the last 3 years, and buy them and just end up giving them away, throwing them away, selling them off to somebody else. So anyway, I hope that helps somebody. And you guys should have a fantastic week. And I'll be back next week. And send me a message if I can assist with something. You have a great day. See you on the wires. Bye-bye.